Who do we think's playing who here in these long-distance phone calls? I mean, Putin definitely stalling Trump, hasn't agreed to a full ceasefire, but he has agreed to this US-Russia headline with this remarkable headline in The Sun, which has really creamed it today, "Watch the puck." Well, what is going on?
Well, look, I thought that the President of the United States had got his man where he wanted him. There was going to be some form of ceasefire. This is a very partial ceasefire on the Russian leader's terms.
Yeah.
So he's not going to hit energy installations. By the way, he's whacking as we speak before this ceasefire kicks in for 30 days. But otherwise, nothing's changed.
Putin's playing Trump like a violin.
He is, isn't
That's
he?
what he's doing. Look, to some extent, the Russians have been isolated in world sport. You don't see them in European football competitions. Now you have...
They're still at the Olympics.
Yeah, now you have, but they don't run under the Russian team, do they? They compete as individuals. No. But there you now have Trump going across and says, let's have high-profile hockey matches. We're here, isn't this great? You know, we can both have ringside seats, we can all enjoy the fun, while people are still being killed in invaded Ukraine. Look, it's an utter disgrace. It'll be a stain on the US for centuries to come.
This is
how they turned their back on a democracy to cosy up to a dictator.
Kevin, people will be absolutely astonished. They had this phone call.
Yeah.
It was about a ceasefire.
Yeah.
It was Trump was going to play hardball with the hard man, Putin. To come out of it with Putin, who's a massive ice hockey fan, to come out it with a series of matches, ice hockey matches, Zelensky must have his head in his hands.
Yeah.
When you consider how many people have died in this war and how many more will carry on dying, and that's the best he can come up with. This is the reality TV star, remember?
Yes.
That's what's going on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
All about TV.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Rejection.
All right, let me play devil's advocate here. Is it possibly not better for the long-term security of the world that the two superpowers are engaging with each other as opposed to standing off in a kind of new Cold War? Is it better that they talk? Is it better that they have friendly communications, because that lays the foundation for better relations in the future?
Yes, it's better they talk, but not if you are surrendering another country that has been invaded, which is effectively what he is doing. They're talking, but what are they getting from it? Well, I can see what Putin's getting from it. He's getting 20% of Ukraine. Yeah. He might get US sanctions lifted. He's getting Zelensky abused and humiliated in the White House. He's getting the halt to arms supplies. He's getting the cutting off of intelligence. I can see everything that Putin
He's also, although we don't know
getting.
if this has been agreed yet, but he's also insisting that America stops arming Ukraine, which is absolutely key, because if there is a 30-day ceasefire, we know that Russia will be rearming like Billio, while denying Ukraine the right to do the same thing.
He wants Europe and Britain also, everyone, to stop rearming.
Which the Prime Minister Keir Starmer spoke to Zelensky last night. I'm sure he said our supplies will continue.
Yeah. Well, hang on, will they? Just a minute. If Trump brokers a deal and agrees that America will not supply Ukraine with anything else for the foreseeable, will Trump go? Will Starmer go against that?
Well, Europe has not been really involved in this, has it? Europe is a bit player, despite where Ukraine is geographically. They're a bit player. This is all about what Trump decides with Putin. Europe has been rendered almost inadmissible.
Putin's won strategically in two areas. One, he's taking the US away from most of Europe. Yeah. And secondly, he's fractured NATO because he's doing unilateral talks with Trump rather than doing them through NATO or involving Europe and Zelensky and Ukraine. Zelensky and Ukraine are just being bypassed, and so we're going to have a hockey match. Isn't that fantastic?
And oddly, of course, that will be very popular in America, because they'll hope that America beats Russia. And again, it's all about America first. And how many Americans care about Ukraine?
Yeah.
How many Americans even know where Ukraine is?
And as Trump would say, it'll make great television.
There'll be blood on the ice, and it'll be the blood of Ukrainians.
Actually, there quite often is in ice hockey anyway.
Yeah, keep your elbows up. But this is...
Let's talk about something else that's been described as brutal, and that is, of course, finally we got some of the detail about the benefits cuts. But we don't know yet, Kevin, how many people are going to be affected, because the impact assessment report has been done but hasn't been published.
I know, and I think that's a big mistake by the government. They say they'll publish it when they come out with a bigger spending review across other areas. There's talk now in Westminster of cuts of up to 11% in unprotected departments away from health and
That's the front page story on the Financial Times this morning. Big cuts next week.
Which would be very big cuts. But it creates worry because we've seen the Resolution Foundation, a very respected, authoritative think tank, talking about 1.2 million people will lose out financially, but we don't know who those 1.2 million
This is turning into a pattern,
are.
isn't it? And we see it almost every morning now on programmes like this, that the government keeps withholding. It doesn't seem to be a government which is willing to share information with the media and therefore with the public. They withhold and withhold.
The last one didn't as well. I remember their welfare cuts, which I oppose. I'm going to oppose these as well. I'm going to be consistent on it. They didn't give impact studies. They always held them back.
Was there any impact assessment on the cut in winter fuel? No.
No, it's something will have been carried out, of course, now.
But we've never seen it.
No.
And remember, on the winter fuel, there was a Labour Party study itself back in 2017 saying it would kill an extra 4,000 pensions a year. So there's a pattern of behaviour. Look, I think the doom and gloom was overdone on the Labour benches because actually 5 billion over 5 years is not such a vast amount of money.
In your paper this morning, Andrew Neil says they haven't gone far enough and they've missed a golden opportunity to cut back on the welfare state.
I think the benefits system... Look, we know that some people, it's in extreme circumstances, why are so many people who are obese getting personal... why are they getting the PIPs? Why can't they just lose some weight to get back to work? Why are we paying them taxpayers' money to stay obese?
Didn't West Streeting have a plan to give those people like that who were unable to work because of obesity weight loss jabs?
Well, where are they?
Well, there were pilots proposed, but it was a relatively small number of people in truth. But if you look at...
taxpayers' money is supporting the fact we're the most obese country in Europe. Since the pandemic, we've got more people now on benefits than any other country in the Western Europe. Why?
Charities who are at the sharp end dealing with people with severe conditions say these are the biggest welfare cuts on disability ever.
Yeah.
The Conservatives produced wider because there was 12 billion cuts. These are 5 billion. But on disability, they say they are the biggest ever to disabled people.
But
so I think all this, it didn't go far enough.
Are you obese? If you're obese, are you disabled?
Some people are obese because they're disabled. If you're a wheelchair
user... Some people are obese because they eat too much.
Not, it's very difficult to get up and about, believe it or not.
Kevin, we are the most obese country in Europe, and a lot of obese people are getting these payments. Why?
But on the general principle, Starmer is
not going to work, so
not backing down. He's writing in the Times this morning. He's saying, yes, we have to be clear-eyed that our system is actively incentivising people towards higher incapacity benefits and, crucially, away from work. That's unfair on taxpayers, and it's a bad long-term outcome for those people. Yeah. So he's basically saying we're saving them from themselves with these cuts.
So we're being cruel to be kind, are we?
Exactly.
Is that what we're doing? I'm going to beat you with this benefit stick because it's good for you, really?
Well, I think it's...
I'm not buying it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a Labour Prime Minister who's making that his pitch, isn't it?
And Labour MPs heard that statement almost in total silence.
The
only time there was a cheer was when the Secretary of State, Liz Kendall, said, we will not be freezing the PIP payments next year.
We've had a huge response on this because I asked people to get in touch if they were either affected or didn't yet know if they were affected. Kirsty says, I currently receive PIP standard rate. I work full-time for the NHS, working at home. I think a lot of people assume that people on PIP benefits don't work.
Yeah,
a large number of them do.
PIPs are meant to be there to help people get into work as well.
Well, PIP is a payment if you have a disability, and if you have a disability, your monthly living costs are far higher than someone who doesn't have a disability. So it actually isn't related to work. Kirsty says, I'm 32, I have ADHD, autism, fibromyalgia and hypermobility. I will be losing my PIP claim following the welfare reform, as I don't get the necessary points. But PIP helps cover additional costs of my disability and ensures I am able to stay in my full-time role. Now, is that an unintended consequence?
It is.
Possibly.
That is one of the problems here.
She's currently working full-time for the NHS. We need Kirsty.
Yeah.
We need her to continue working full-time in the NHS.
But so that instead of freezing it, they're making the criteria more difficult to get it.
And it sounds like she's going to lose out, which means the NHS loses a full-time worker potentially, and we lose the tax receipts.
And there'll be genuine losers here. And it's funny, isn't it? The Tories were scared off of going on to these pit payments.
Yeah, but the Tories were taking the line, they didn't go far enough yesterday.
Yeah.
Things are bad with Labour. They would have been worse with the last lot.
I'll tell you who's breathing a big sigh of relief this morning in Montecito, and that's Prince Harry, because these documents relating to his US visa application, and of course this whole question of did he declare that he was a drug user or not on them and all the rest of it, they have been released, but they are heavily redacted. America's playing nice to our Prince Harry. They basically aren't releasing any details about whether or not he confessed in his visa application to using drugs. And yet he talks about that in his book, Spare. How many times has that?
Yeah, well, a number of times. But let's just explain. If you've never been to America or you've never applied for a visa to go to America, there is a question in the application about drug use. And so the Heritage Foundation, which is this right-wing think tank...
Very right-wing.
...in the States, said, well, hang on a moment, Prince Harry, in his book Spare, I have marked the pages here in which he openly admits. I mean, on page 76 of Spare, I had been doing cocaine. And on page 67... I don't remember how we got the stuff. Whenever we found ourselves in possession, we'd commandeer a tiny upstairs bathroom wherein we'd implement a surprisingly thoughtful, orderly assembly line, and he's talking about smoking spliffs, weed. So, if he admits to using drugs in his book Spare, should we know whether he admitted to that on his immigration visa application? Heritage Foundation say yes. We've now got the documents. I don't know if we can show them online, but they're all redacted.
Well, the American government is saying it's a personal matter for him. It's a matter of his personal privacy, and they're not going to breach that.
When Trump was asked a couple of weeks ago about this, whether he would be kicked out, he said, no, I won't kick him out. He's got enough on his plate with a horrible wife, is what he
I think
said.
He's got enough trouble on his plate with his wife.
I think he said she was awful.
But it's a the Heritage Foundation is a very right-wing think tank which has got a personal beef with him and her politically. But yes, I would quite like to know, actually.
And look,
I will
why
admit...
should he be treated differently? Because he's a royal?
Well, actually...
But we don't know what he said.
No.
We don't.
That's the key. We don't know what he said when he filled out his application.
But you don't automatically have your visa rejected if you make that confession. Apparently, immigration officers in the States have, quote, discretion to make a final decision based on different factors. One of those factors may be the fact that he's an A1 head of state. And they have different visa application forms, apparently. Experts are saying that he could have used an A1 head of state visa, which apparently entails much less stringent security checks. And that would have allowed him to come to and fro from the US and possibly allowed him to get away with confessing to doing that kind of...
Because, of course, you get rocks like Mick Jagger has taken drugs in the past. Russell Brand has gone off the... You know, he's gone completely bonkers now. Terrible allegations against him. But, of course, he's been, and despite taking drugs, you normally have to go for an interview. And you're interviewed about what you did and when you did it. I know communists who've been allowed in. They normally used to keep out communists, but they get you away.
I just can't see what the point is of publishing these heavily redacted documents, because they tell us nothing.
But
what's the point? None the wiser.
Out of curiosity, I would like to know whether he told the truth.
Whether he lied.
Yes, whether he told the truth or lied.
He lied.
On his visa form. Just out of interest, and they can say, yes, he lied, but we've corrected it now and we understand.
Just on the more general point, what does the future hold for Harry, do you think? I mean, a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, things were looking pretty rosy. It looked as if he and his wife had a pretty good career out there, this amazing Netflix deal, all the rest of it. The world listened, they were popular. Their popularity in the States certainly has plummeted. Her latest TV series has completely bombed in terms of the critics.
Sorry. In terms of the critics, there is another series.
Well, they'd already made it.
They'd already made it.
Coming out.
But they made it before anybody saw the first one.
Yes, but it is still coming out. As far as I know, they haven't cancelled it or decided not to run it just because the critics didn't like the
ratings are not great.
Do you know that? I'm not sure that Netflix have revealed the ratings.
And remember, the 5-part series on polo completely bombed.
Yeah, because not that many people are interested in polo. But a lot of people are interested in Meghan and how how she cooks her spaghetti.
Or how she gets
And
someone else to cook it for her.
And I'm going to confess that I have made it 3 times since
wow.
watching the
Based on
episode.
her recipe?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, and I thoroughly recommend it. It is delicious.
You just
Megan.
chuck it all in one pan
Congratulations.
and put the heat on, don't you?
Yeah,
Well,
and that's exactly what we want as busy working mums.
Megan, the domestic housewife superstar.
There we
Meghan
go.
Mark II.
There we go.
but my question stands. What does the future hold? Say the next 5 years.
He's become a bit player in his wife's life.
Well, he's not even mentioned in the
No.
second, this
No.
much vaunted second series of a programme.
Richard,
He's not even mentioned.
Richard,
exactly.
they might have a quieter life, but they may have quite a happy life. I mean,
they?
they've got
Yeah.
piles of money.
Have they?
Well, all the TV deals,
Yeah.
and he was independently
I think-
wealthy. He's just got a load of money in a court action against News UK.
I think
10 million quid is being
I think his
mentioned.
lifestyle is very expensive. Paying for 24-hour security around the clock is very expensive.
Will there ever be a rapprochement between him and William?
Never.
Never, ever?
I don't see it.
I think
And
there might.
No, I think it'll be more difficult when the king isn't with us anymore.
I was going to ask that, when the king dies.
When the king goes, I think it'll be even more difficult.
Hang on,
because
what-
I think his brother is much more hardline on this.
Yeah, but when a parent dies, it can sometimes destroy a family and everyone fights over the will and goes different ways, but it can also bring people together.
Well,
and it makes you think, why have we got this feud as 2 brothers? Our dad's dead, you know, we're not going to be here forever. Let's try and
I
heal
suspect
it.
William thinks his father's health problems have not been helped by the way his little brother has carried on in public.
That'll be true.
That book dumped buckets on the
And the
on
Queen
king
was
and the Queen.
extremely unhappy about it.
And
Yeah,
you know, the truth,
buckets.
the truth is,
All
All
the
to
last
make
few years of
money.
her
And the timing of the Oprah interview
appalling.
when the Duke of Edinburgh
You know,
was
It was
very seriously
poorly.
said.
Yeah, it was
spaghetti recipes
poor.
are nice, but other
Yes.
people have spaghetti recipes. Why are we really interested in them? We're really interested in them because of the bad blood. And he's in line to the throne. He's a part of an institution in the UK, and he hates them and he's dished them. Now, you can cheer or jeer
I just
him.
wonder, OK,
but that's
so,
the interest.
so I think over here, there's a lot of negativity towards them. I'm not sure that the same negativity exists over in the States.
I think they
Apparently,
don't
more than half of
I don't
those
think- I don't
polls
think
have
people
warm
care.
feelings
I know, I
towards
don't think
Prince
people care
Harry.
about it.
I think we need to find out how that Netflix series did before we decide it
Well, I
was a failure.
suspect if it was a fantastic rating success, we'd have heard about it.
But if you're Netflix...
Because they would have told us.
But if you're
Because they're not shy about saying how fabulous
But
they
if
are.
you're Netflix, you got talked about day after day after day. It's great branding for Netflix.
Yes.
It's absolutely fantastic, even if it didn't get
They're
tens of
broadcasting
millions.
a series from a couple of old losers.
So they're not...
Is
so
that us, you
Couple
mean?
of old
You don't
losers.
mean us.
No, you're the loser.
the Americans aren't sending Prince Harry and Meghan back yet.
Good.
But meanwhile, a French politician has asked for the Statue of Liberty to be sent back. This is Raphael Glucksmann, who's a member of the European Parliament, who says, we say to the Americans who have chosen to side with tyrants that the Statue of Liberty was our gift to you, but apparently you despise her. Send it back. She will be happy here with us.
That's going to happen, isn't it?
Can you imagine? But it is a symbol, isn't it?
It is. Well, one of the most famous.
Yes, exactly. You know, send us your
Of
sick
liberty,
and needy and...
And they're not anymore, as they erect barriers, and Trump talks in the most poisonous, vile way about, about other people.
And trade barriers too, and Putin.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, historically speaking, this is just America returning to form. America traditionally has been an isolationist country.
It is.
All right, things were temporarily different at the back end of World War II and up
Well, that's
until
only
after
because
the
the
Cold War.
Japanese bombed
But
Pearl Harbor.
Well, you say that, but actually, a lot of people don't know this, but America didn't want to declare war on Germany at all. It declared war, obviously, on Japan after Pearl Harbor, but it didn't declare war on Germany. It was Hitler who declared war on America.
Right.
And Roosevelt had no alternative but to respond. But if that hadn't happened, Roosevelt was very keen to keep out of a European war. They weren't interested.
Well, the truth is, the World War swung for Britain because Hitler declares war on the US.
And
Japan
invaded
attacks
Russia,
the
which
US,
was
and invades Russia, the then Soviet Union.
let me tell you what the White House has responded. Firmly rejected the suggestion. But listen to the language of Caroline Leavitt, who is the White House press secretary. My advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now. And then she uses a phrase which I can imagine will be quite triggering for people. They should be grateful.
It's a low blow.
That's a theme, isn't it, from the White House, that it's time
You
that
can hear
people
Trump saying it.
were grateful to America.
Zelensky. He's saying it about
Exactly.
Zelensky. Not grateful enough.
Now, a mother whose 16-year-old son was killed by a machete-wielding gang says that she is beyond angry after learning that one of her son's killers has been posting rap videos bragging about the attack online.
Leanne Ekland's son, Max, was murdered along with his best friend, Mason Rist, in Bristol just over a year ago. But now she's become one of many bereaved families who find out that their loved ones' killers still have access to phones and social media and online websites from behind bars, even though that is banned.
And Leanne's here now. Hello, Leanne. Thanks so much for coming in. We do appreciate how difficult this is for you. I mean, to be honest with you, I found it extraordinary that you're able to speak at all about this. I mean, you must be so angry that words must choke in your mouth. Yeah. When did you first discover that this guy was posting these disgusting lyrics online?
My daughter made me aware that there was an account, so I stupidly searched for the account and I came across it. And it was actually private at the time, so we couldn't actually see any of the posts, and I sort of kept checking it. And then eventually it became public. I noticed that there was a rap on there. I didn't really go into it, and I reported it to Instagram to have it taken down. You get your generic message to say that we're going to look into it. I looked the next day and there was another rap, so I went onto that rap and I didn't want to listen to it. And I heard the reference to 33 seconds, which is obviously how long the attack took, and that's all I needed to hear. So I knew that was reference to Max and Mason. So then I got in contact with my liaison officers and reported to them, and I knew that many of my friends and family knew about the account as well, and they were reporting the account. I personally think it was taken down because the media got involved.
I'm sure you're right, yeah.
And then, obviously, yeah, it was quite distressing to hear.
So one of the young men who murdered your boy is glorifying in it.
Yeah.
He's not sitting in the Young Offenders Institute, and he'll shortly go on to prison, ashamed or thinking about what he did.
No.
He's using it to make his kind of music.
Yeah, yeah. It's an insult to my son, you know. They were two really lovely boys. They were not wrapped up in any gang wars, any postcode wars. They were two boys who went out for pizza and never came home.
I know.
You know, and they were shown in court that they were showing remorse, and I personally didn't see that in court. And it's obviously now, he's not shown any remorse.
Oh, quite the opposite.
He's gloating about what he's done. And then to put on a post that my previous Instagram post has been taken down, add this one, and more raps will follow. And it was just, I don't understand how he could have access to any internet. Like, he's lost that right when he murdered my son and Mason. All that right, he should not have any internet access at all. And he is allowed internet access with supervision, which obviously that's failed because he's obviously managed to... I don't believe he should have any right to the outside world.
Well, there's a few issues here because he is not supposed to be online without supervision. So if he's online and someone supervised this, that would in itself be an absolute travesty of justice, wouldn't it?
Definitely.
I just want to let you know what the response is from Prisons and Probation Service. Victims and their families deserve better than to see perpetrators gloating about their horrific crimes on social media. We work with the police to investigate and remove harmful content and punish any offender who is caught using a phone or social media in prison, including with extra time behind bars. Have you been contacted about how this guy got access to social media or got access to a phone to film this?
Absolutely nothing. And I think that's where I feel a bit let down, because I think if they would personally contacted myself or Nikki and actually explained the situation, I probably wouldn't be as angry. Obviously, of course I'm angry. It should have never happened, but I think we are the victims in this. And I think that they should have personally contacted us and said, look, we are sorry, we're going to look into it. It should have never happened, and I would have accepted that.
And also to find out what the punishment is going to be.
Yeah.
Because it says here, we would punish any offender, including with extra time behind bars. I mean, for you to feel that justice is done, you need to feel that this individual and those involved feel remorse.
Yeah.
As you said, this is not evidence of remorse.
No,
This is
definitely
evidence of some sort of
Definitely
pride or gloating. It's disgusting.
Yeah, yeah.
So what punishment is he going to get?
Yeah. You know, it didn't matter what sentence Cody or any of the other defendants got. You know, I live my life sentence every day. I feel I'm imprisoned in my home. I'm scared to go out sometimes. And if he's actually got access to the outside world, he could be talking to anybody. I could be a target. And it frightens me. But I'm not going to hide away because of that. He's already ruined my life, you know. My heart beats, but I died that day. And I'm not living. I'm existing. And he done that. And then to actually see that on TV or on Instagram and Snapchat, because it's not just Instagram, it was Snapchat, for him gloating.
It's honestly horrific
you know?
for you.
And one of the worst aspects of this, there are so many horrible aspects to it, is that of all people, it's you, his mother, who's having to report this, who's having to pick up arms on this. It's you who's having to do this. No one else is doing it. Not one other soul. It's you.
Yeah. And my daughters have been, they're tormented by this, you know. It's not nice to see.
And especially as the individual says, more raps are to come. So now you must be, in a sense, a state of, when's it going to happen? When am I going to hear more? I'm absolutely shocked that the prison service hasn't been in touch with you directly to explain what happened, to explain what measures they're taking to make sure that this doesn't happen again. When a threat has been made, that it will happen again, and to tell you what the consequences will be.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that you are in that situation. So the Meta got in touch, we got in touch with them. They confirmed to us both of Cody's accounts have been taken down. We're happy for you to share that Meta has already taken action.
What about Snapchat? They've said that it, quote, strictly prohibits the glorification of violent behaviour on our platform. If we become aware of the content or it's reported to us through our in-app reporting tools, we remove it and we take appropriate action. Look, this programme will be contacting the prison service today and putting these questions to them. And we'll be asking them why they haven't contacted you, and more to the point, when they are going to contact you and what they're going to say. And as soon as we get that information, and I sincerely hope we do, we'll pass that straight on to you.
Thank you, I appreciate
And what
that.
punishment Cody gets
Yeah.
for using a phone or being online.
Yeah, definitely.
Look, before we let you go, do you want to tell us a little bit about your memories of Max and his friendship with Mason?
I knew you were going to ask me this.
Well, because the reason I asked Leanne, and you don't have to answer, is because Max was more than somebody who was the victim that night, wasn't he? Max was he was your son. I don't want to make you. I want to remember Max. And we can do that. We can do that afterwards if you like. We can talk about Max.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a victim. He was a wonderful, gorgeous,
And he was.
16-year-old boy, wasn't he?
And that is why I do what I do.
Yeah.
You know, this is why I get up every day. Because I know that's what he would want me to do.
Yeah.
But I'm struggling to learn to live without him. It's really difficult because he was just a massive part of my life. He was a massive part of my girl's life. And it's really affected us as a family. You know, grief is sometimes supposed to bring you together, but it's not brought us together because we don't know how to cope with our grief.
Because you've been robbed of the future, haven't you? It's not just you've been robbed of him in the here and now. You've been robbed of his future and all those years ahead of him.
Choose my son's coffin. I should never have had to arrange his funeral. You know, it's and I've got to live with that for the rest of my life.
apart from what's happening and the story that we're talking about today, what else are you doing in Max's memory? How are you fighting for him?
Well, we've set up a Max Dixon Foundation.
Good.
So just to do with bleed kits and stuff like that. And it gives me such a purpose to get up in and I see his face and I think, like, you deserve to be remembered in such a good way and not the way that you were taken away from us.
And a bleed kit, I mean, it sounds like an obvious thing, but that is to make sure that anybody...
They've got vital minutes
immediate
before,
access.
yes, before any, obviously, ambulance service or anything. It just gives them that vital minutes that could save their life.
You are going to save lives.
Yes.
And that is an important purpose. And you do have a future, Leanne. You and your family.
Yeah, it's just hard.
You're an incredible woman.
You're a very brave woman indeed.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Well, as expected, the government announced the biggest shake-up to welfare system in a generation, as it hopes to shave $5 billion off the welfare budget.
Our campaigners, such as Baroness Tanni Gray-Thompson, from whom we just heard, say the proposed cuts will force disabled people into poverty. Minister for Social Security and Disability, Stephen Timms, joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Jackie Darlington, who currently receives the lower rate of PIP, says she thinks she's going to lose out, and she's not even sure if her son, Joshua, who has Down syndrome and limited communication skills, cannot work. She's not even sure if he's guaranteed to continue receiving PIP. Why can't you tell people right now who are still so anxious about the cuts what's going to happen to their benefits?
Well, what we set out yesterday was a plan to fix a broken system, proper employment support, hundreds of thousands of people we know at the moment out of work on health and disability grounds who'd love to be in a job if they had the support to make it possible for them. We'll be providing that support. We're going to remove the discouragement to work that's been created in the benefit system by changes over the last 15 years or so. At the moment, there's a big prize if you can be found incapable ever of working. We want instead to support people on a pathway back into work, which may take some time, but the support needs to be there. And we're also making changes to personal independence payment to make sure that it's sustainable for the long term.
But that's all
so
very
that
general...
exactly people that like those you've just referred to are supported beyond the next couple of years.
So that's all... Sorry to interrupt you. That's all very general strategy. And what people who are on these benefits needed to hear yesterday was the detail, and they didn't get it. And their anxiety continues. They were hoping, at least yesterday, for some kind of closure over their fears, but they haven't got it. Why couldn't you have been clearer about what this is going to mean to people?
Well, actually, the details around personal independence payment were in the statement yesterday. People were very anxious, I think, when the previous government said they were going to replace PIP with vouchers. We've made it absolutely clear we're not going to do that. We're not going to freeze it. We're not going to means test it. But we are making sure that it's going to be there for the long term to provide support for people who depend on it, because it's got a very, very important job to do. And, you know, if the rate of increase of costs for the system over the last 5 years, if that carried on into the future, it would put the whole system at risk. We've made changes to ensure that it's going to be there for the long term.
OK, can I just establish then, in these two particular cases, Jackie's son Joshua will never be able to work. He gets PIP. Will it be cut?
Well, I don't know about Joshua's circumstances, but what I would say is
so
that...
for an individual who'll never be able to work, will you cut their PIP?
The question of PIP eligibility will depend on the outcome of the assessment. Now, no change is going to be made at all until November of next year, November 2026. And then this new assessment will kick in at the first regular assessment that's due to take place after that time. Now, my guess would be, in the case of somebody with the circumstances that you've described, they are likely to score at least 4 points on one of the daily living activities, which means that their benefit will continue to be paid. And indeed, because of the changes we've made announced yesterday, people can be much more confident about the long-term availability of this benefit.
Now, you yourself, 15 years ago, were the target of a homicidal knife attack at your MP's surgery, which you just about managed to survive. We'll come on to that in a second for reasons which we'll explain. But in the meantime, based on that, can we ask you what your position is on these young killers who are being allowed access to phones and the internet when they're in young people's institutions or in prison? We had the mother of a 16-year-old boy on the show with us earlier, a very, very moving interview. Her son was stabbed to death, and her killer has since been posting absolutely disgusting rap lyrics online, explicitly glorifying and boasting about the attack on that day. But the prison service will not tell Max's mother how that happened or if the killer is going to be punished. They won't even speak to her. What's your position on that?
Well, that's not a report that I've heard previously. I am very concerned to hear that that's the position, and I'll be very happy to raise it with my colleagues in the Ministry of Justice.
Good.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I had a conversation with Max's mum, Leanne, after her interview on air, and I did say that you would take, I suspected you would take an interest and help us investigate this story. The spokesperson for Prisons and Probation said, "We work with the police to investigate and remove harmful content and punish any offender who is caught using a phone or social media in prison, including with extra time behind bars." So there are two issues here. Firstly, how the offender was able to get a phone and access to social media in prison, and she wants an answer to that, and none has so far been forthcoming directly to her. And the second is, she feels like this shows the killer has no remorse, even though, of course, they're behind bars, you know, for the offence of murder, and there is a minimum term of 23 years. But she says this is adding insult to injury. Why is she having to report and other people having to report this to the prison? Why isn't monitoring being done? And also, please help her understand whether and how long the punishment, the extra time, might be. And so can we reassure her that you will take that up?
I've got every sympathy with Maxine in that situation.
Leanne.
And if you Leanne, I beg your pardon.
That's okay.
And if you let me have the details, I'll happily take it up with my colleagues.
Well, we will certainly do that, and we ourselves on this programme will be contacting the prison service today to try and get some answers out of them, because it's clearly unacceptable, isn't it? Can we ask you, how are you doing 15 years on from this terrible event when you were at your surgery just after the election, and this woman stabbed you, I think, twice in the stomach? She's now in prison, due to come out quite soon. How are you managing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I had to be rushed to hospital at the time, but St Bart's Hospital did a great job in patching me up, and I've been fine ever since.
And I understand, because you've said this publicly, that your intention is to go and see the woman who attacked you, because you say you want to forgive her, but you can't forgive her until you've had some kind of dialogue.
Yeah, well, I was in a restorative justice process, which I had hoped would lead to a meeting. In fact, it hasn't done for whatever reason, and so I suspect now that conversation won't be taking place.
How do you feel about the prospect of her imminent release?
Well, she served her time. You know, there is a thorough process that goes on, I know, when a release is impending. I've got every confidence that'll be done properly. As I understand it, she's been in some ways a moral prisoner. So I presume that once her minimum term has been served in full, as it will have been, I think, later on this year, that'll be a minimum 15 years term, then I think the likelihood is that she will be given the OK for release.
We seem to be in an era, don't we, a new era of homicidal attacks on our MPs. Are you satisfied with the level of security that people like you have?
Well, there's been a lot changed in the wake of some of the terrible attacks that we've seen over the last few years. I've made some changes myself. We're given quite a lot more support now on security than was the case before. And I certainly feel very comfortable now doing the job that I'm doing. But I do think we need to make sure that MPs generally are able to feel comfortable carrying out the very important jobs that all of us have to do.
We've had a massive response from people this morning after our interview with Leanne, who we were just talking about, and this disgusting situation, and she's not alone in suffering this, where these young killers, usually who stab their victims to death, are posting online raps glorifying it. It was actually reasonably heartening to hear the Minister there say that he will this day investigate it.
He's a very decent man, Stephen Timms. He'll be horrified. But yeah, I was listening to the mother, and I remember the case. 4 teenagers and a man go looking for people they think threw bricks at a house, get the wrong people, and they murder them. They just slash them to death. Yep. If you're in a young offenders institute or you're in prison, I'm sorry, your communications with the outside world have to be tightly controlled. You can have visits, you might have the odd phone call. You should not be able to record rap music or any music at all that is glorifying the murder you have committed. And it's taunting the mother. And it's inciting
other susceptible young men to do the same thing.
Of course it is. And it's not, as you say, like a sort of a quick, sneaky phone call that shouldn't be made. I mean, to record these lyrics takes time.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes a lot of time.
How have they got the phone device in the first place?
There's a big problem with smuggling them in, sometimes up people's bottoms, and then they hide them in their own bottoms in prison. The use of drones. Have been cases of corrupt staff too, taking them in return for money, but it's just got to be clamped down. And if you're caught, you've got to be punished. And whether that's isolation, lose all your rights for a while, longer sentence, what it is, and the prison service has to communicate
it's
properly
more than that.
with the mother.
How they've treated that mother, it's callous indifference. That's what it is, and that's appalling.
And Stephen
She's
Timms,
a victim here.
Yeah, she is. She absolutely is.
She really is.
Everybody who heard her interview said, she said, I shouldn't have to be here.
No, exactly.
I mean, firstly, she should not have lost her son, Max, and his friend, Mason. And secondly, she should not be the one, amongst others, who have to report to the prison service this video is online.
And their response implies they don't care.
We keep seeing this with the criminal justice system, and it's the victims who are made to suffer.
Absolutely.
We've seen it with the Nottingham victims. The 3 families, they've had to fight and fight and fight when they should never have had to do any of that. They should have got their inquiry, should have got their answers, shouldn't have had police officers or people in hospitals snooping on the injuries on their kids.
It's part of a pattern, isn't it? I mean, because we also see something else which is, to my view, absolutely unacceptable, that the perpetrators of terrible crimes are allowed to stay in their cells and not come into court to hear judgment given by the judge and to hear victim statements given by those who've been affected. They're allowed to stay away. I find that absolutely
And the government say they're going to change the law. They should drag them into court, drag them back.
So let's turn our attention then from some pretty dark stuff to a shining light, who is Group Captain John Hemingway, 105 years old, the last link between the Battle of Britain pilots, Winston Churchill, and the rest of us mere mortals, and his lovely son, Brian, came in to tell us they are hoping for a memorial.
There will be one.
Paying tribute to his dad. Let's have a listen.
He would have been slightly amused and slightly baffled. What's all the fuss? Because he didn't talk to anyone for 40 years, but he was pleased about it. It took 200,000 people to get Dad into an aeroplane. Yeah, they had to make them, they had to service them, the WAF, plotters, and so he doesn't feel he should be the person who should take the accolade.
He brought his father's flying logbook from the Battle of Britain, the actual document in. And it was so formal and dispassionate. It was almost like a banker's ledger. It was like August the 18th, shot down, bailed out, swam to shore. I mean, it was just cryptic little, beautifully written copperplate writing.
What an uplifting and enlightening moment that took 200,000 people to put him in that cockpit, knowing, and it's true, we live in a society, we all together, we got to rub along, and we all benefit each other, or it can go horribly wrong. And I think that's a fantastic attitude. You know, he wasn't a hero. He was a hero. But I love it, the fact.
And
he was
deserves a
uncomfortable
wonderful
being called
memorial
it.
service with the Prime Minister should be there, the Secretary of State of Defence, and somebody from the royal family.
Prince,
Those two will be there.
Prince of Wales.
And a flight past, if you please.
I think so, with a Spitfire and...
the Battle of Britain.
You hear a Spitfire engine, that Merlin
That Merlin
engine, and
throb.
I just feel sort of emotional.
Makes your chest vibrate.
Doesn't it?
Yep.